Do you have a dream car? Mine is the Lucid Air. Are you intrigued by electric vehicles? The Lucid Air EV has been called the best driving car in the world. And the Lucid Air Sapphire is certifiably the fastest production car in the world. Listen to Lucid Driver Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts or at luciddriver.buzzsprout.com.
Welcome to the Joy of Cruising podcast with your host, award-winning author Paul C. Thornton, a weekly conversation with the amazing cruisers featured in the Joy of Cruising books, comprised of The Joy of Cruising, Cruising Interrupted, new release, The Joy of Cruising Again, as well as other fun, informative global cruise personalities. It's the next best thing to cruising, hearing about cruising from the unique and diverse perspectives of Paul's amazing guests. If you hear about a cruise that interests you, book it at www.thejoyofacation.com or enter to win a free cruise for two. Again, www.thejoyofacation.com. We really appreciate your feedback, so leave us a text. Paul can't reply, but he may read your text on the air.
Hello, passionate cruisers. This is Paul. And this week on the Joy of Cruising podcast, I am delighted to welcome Carra Miller, a maritime attorney. I have long wanted to bring to listeners a perspective of matters of law and passenger rights when it comes to cruising. I have been amazed at some of my findings regarding a cursory look at some of those matters, and I suspect Carra will share some eye-opening information with you. Her visit is timely given the burgeoning Hantavirus crisis, with 3 passengers dead and 17 Americans among the nearly 150 people stranded off the coast of West Africa. The MV Hondius cruise ship Hantavirus Outbreak raises urgent legal questions about what cruise operators owe their passengers when things go wrong at sea. Among other matters you should be aware of as a cruiser, Carra explains these passenger rights and the duty the cruise ship operator owes them. Carra Miller is the founding attorney of Miller Smith, PLLC, a firm that represents cruise ship passengers, crew members, harbor workers, and others injured in maritime environments. Her practice centers on vessel incidents, injuries on navigable waters, and claims under the Jones Act, the Death on the High Seas Act, and other federal maritime statutes. Carra earned her J.D. from Tulane University Law School, where she received a maritime law certificate and served as editor-in-chief of the Tulane Environmental Law Journal. She holds a B.S. in Maritime Administration from Texas A&M University. She has written and spoken on maritime law topics and has published commentary on maritime liability issues. Welcome, Carra, to the Joy of Cruising podcast.
Thank you.
How you doing?
I'm doing well today. How are you?
Yep, I'm doing fine. We got another podcast got 2 podcasts to record today, so it's going to be a productive day. It looks nice outside, so I look forward to getting out later. Before we talk about legal matters in cruising, legal matters of particular interest to passengers, tell our listeners about yourself, where you're from, where you live, anything you would like to share.
Sure. So I grew up in a little town on the coast of Mississippi called Ocean Springs, right next to Biloxi. I left there after Hurricane Katrina because it was pretty damaged there for a while. I think probably a lot of your listeners are used to kind of the intensity that comes along with hurricanes and how that can change plans, right? So anyway, so after I moved away from Mississippi on the coast, I came to Texas. My mom is originally from Texas. So right now I live in Corpus Christi primarily. I also spend a whole lot of time in Houston. And I lived in Galveston for about 6 years previously and just loved it there. Loved seeing all the cruise ships coming in and out and that cruise terminal has gotten much, much busier since I lived there. It's been a while now. But I love the coast. I love the ocean. I love everything having to do with the maritime industry, and it's just so much fun to get to do it for work.
Yeah, speaking of the maritime industry, even before law school, you studied maritime administration. So what motivated your interest in seafaring matters, especially being from, not, well, I guess Mississippi's close to bodies of water. Is where you're from anywhere near Natchez?
So Natchez is about, ooh, when I lived there, I bet it took longer to get there than it does now, but I want to say it's about 3 hours away, 3 hours north. So the little town I grew up in, Ocean Springs, is actually right there on the Gulf of Mexico,
Oh, okay.
around the water.
So you
Uh,
were near you were near the water growing up. Okay.
yes,
Okay.
yes. I
I
grew up
asked about Natchez because I've been to Natchez. That's about the only place I've been. But yeah, you were even closer to the water.
Yes, right on it, which is why I left after Katrina, because Katrina was right on it too.
So did that have anything did growing up on the water have anything to do with your uh, interest in maritime administration?
Well, yes and no. It had a huge influence on me wanting to always live by the coast.
Okay.
I love going to the beach. I love seeing all the seabirds. I love eating seafood. I love just seeing the ships go by. When I grew up, it was mostly shrimp boats and small barges that would go by when I would see them in my hometown. But it's kind of this funny thing. I really never, growing up, I never really thought about being a professional in the maritime industry. I really kind of just fell into it because growing up around the ocean, I always had this love for it. And I went to college. I decided to major in marine biology.
Oh,
I
okay.
think
Hmm.
I think what I was really wanting to do was become a mermaid, but that I couldn't find it on the course catalog. And I did that for a while, and then I kind of discovered that um, it was really tough to get a job in that industry. The jobs are just really in demand. You have to be at the top of your game. You have to have all the good connections. You have to have just really a lot of luck on top of all of that to be able to get a job in that field coming out of college. And so I thought, well, I'll do something else related to the ocean. And so I found this maritime administration major that a lot of my friends who I had met during my time as a marine biology student were pursuing as a major. And I ended up just absolutely loving it.
Okay.
It's essentially an international business degree with a focus in port operations and logistics. And in that major, in that coursework, I had the opportunity to take some maritime law classes as a college student. And so that's what really made me very interested in it because it's a very, very unique area of law. There are these ancient principles that apply. There are some laws that are, almost 1,000 years old that we apply here in the United States, essentially in the exact same way that they did almost 1,000 years ago.
Wow.
So it's a very fun and interesting area of the law.
Now, at that point that you changed majors, you decided to go the maritime route. Had you cruised?
I had not yet. So my
Okay.
first cruise was a graduation present when I graduated from college from my mom. She and I went on our first cruise together then.
Oh, great. Tell us about that. I like to ask my guests to talk about their first cruise because so many who are listening, I suspect so many who are listening to this podcast, are thinking about their first cruise, and so I like to give listeners a flavor of what my individual guests' first cruises were like. So when and what ship?
So it was the Carnival Triumph, which has since been renamed, but it's a large carnival ship. It used to sail out of Galveston. I think it still goes there sometimes.
Yep, I've been on it. It used
Oh,
to,
good.
yeah, it used to sail out of New York as well. I'm from up that way. I live in Virginia now, but I've been on trial long time ago.
Yeah, well, wonderful. So, back then that was the biggest ship sailing out of Galveston. It was always really exciting to see when it would pull up because for anyone who's ever spent some time in Galveston or sailed out of that cruise terminal, those cruise ships are taller than every building in Galveston except for one. And everyone knows the one I'm talking about if you've ever been there. There's one big tall skyscraper and everything else is these shorter Victorian, very historic uh buildings. So it's really neat to see the cruise ship come up back behind downtown and be part of the skyline of downtown Galveston. So I remember that first cruise, my mom, I was living in Galveston at the time, and my mom came and met me at my apartment, and we just walked down to the cruise terminal together. And it was so neat to just see it there behind all the buildings and just thinking about, this great trip that we were about to have together. So we boarded the ship, and one of the things that I love so much about cruise travel is that you you have this kind of cool down time. I think in so many ways of vacationing, maybe you have to drive a long time or you have to fly and go through the airport and go through TSA and worry about, all of those things and sit in those little bitty airplane seats. And a lot of people fly to their destinations to go on cruises, but there's this adjustment period. And I really like that about it because I think that in other ways that I've traveled before, flying, driving, once I get there, I feel like, okay, now I'm supposed to have fun, but I'm
Hmm.
really tired and I really just kind of want to take a nap.
Hmm.
But on the cruise, you kind of have that opportunity to kind of get into it. You kind of look around, you're seeing all these people. It's kind of just eases you into it. So you're kind of de-stress from that transition of travel, and you kind of can just get into it right away without feeling like you're, am I having fun yet? It's a nice little transition period there.
As you approached that first cruise, were you apprehensive at all? Did you worry about seasickness or the big bodies of water? I guess you grew up appreciating water, so that probably wasn't a concern.
I don't think I thought about it at all. I really I was so excited to be out in the middle of the ocean for the first time and have that experience of seeing the stars at night and seeing that blue, 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 deep, deep, deep water. And just thinking about, well, what else are we going to see out there? Are there going to be dolphins? Are we going to see whales? That first cruise, I saw a whole lot of flying fish, like close to the surface of the water, out there in the Gulf. And so I really never had any sort of apprehension about being out there. But I also had the benefit of my industry knowledge and knowing that these ships are, especially ones as big as the Triumph, are, they're very big, which means they're very stable. And so there's you feel some movement, but it's not like being on your friend's bay boat, right? It's a much smoother experience.
So it sounds like you took to cruising pretty immediately. I mean, it was a good experience.
It
Mhm.
was.
Good, good. Let's shift gears and talk about what we mentioned in the intro, the hantavirus crisis. Am I saying it right?
Yes, the
Okay.
hantavirus.
First, give us an overview of the situation.
We'll be right back.
The Joy Vacation by Dream Vacations invites you to join us on a bucket list adventure to Africa. We're going to Kenya and Egypt for 14 days, April 10th through April 24th, 2027. A week in Kenya, including safaris, and a week in Egypt, including the pyramids and a 4-day Nile River cruise. This adventure includes air from the U.S., all transfers, all accommodations, private tours, and many meals. $5,000 to $5,500, depending on air, per person. Double occupancy. Only $250 per person deposit due at booking. The remainder is not due until late 2026. For a detailed itinerary, online brochure, and to book, email me at pthornton, THORNTON, pthornton @dreamvacations.com.
Sure. So there was a small cruise vessel on its way to the Canary Islands, and I think there were less than 200 passengers on board. There were, I think, 19 Americans, people from all over the world. This is one of those cruises with a very long itinerary. And somebody on board became sick with the hantavirus. And then that man unfortunately passed away. His wife decided to leave the vessel, understandably, and she ended up becoming sick as well and passing away. And it wasn't until then that people realized that maybe this was the one contagious strain of hantavirus that's contagious from person to person versus contagious from something else to people.
Wow. Hey, now, I never heard of hantavirus. Is that something that has been discussed in the past? Just like I never heard of coronavirus when it first surfaced. I mean, hantavirus, is that something that's been on anyone's radar?
Well, I think the hantavirus itself has been a known virus for a long time, but I think that as far as I can remember, since I've been a maritime lawyer, I have never heard of it, of any sort of hantavirus outbreak on a cruise ship before. It's a very, very rare virus in general. I think there's multiple strains of it. And this particular strain is the only one that is contagious between people. It's normally spread through contact with rodents, mice. And so this is a rare strain, but it's also, my understanding is it's not nearly as contagious as COVID, even this one strain that is transmissible between people. It really requires close contact.
And we'll never know. Well, correct me if I'm wrong when I say this. We'll never know the source of the virus in this particular case, right?
Well, I think that we'll never know for sure. I just listened to I was listening to it was I'm trying to church it up a little bit, but it was an Instagram reel.
Okay,
So
okay.
maybe not the most credible source, don't believe everything you see on the internet, but it popped up as this theory as to what had happened. And I believe this particular cruise was a bird touring cruise. It was for people
Ah,
who are bird
okay.
watchers. And so what I heard, and take it with a grain of salt, this is not my opinion, but somebody had a theory that this couple with the gentleman who unfortunately passed away, who was the first person with the hantavirus on that cruise ship, that he had been seeking out a particular type of bird in I want to say it was Paraguay, maybe. And this bird lives in a very localized, area, um, as a rare, endangered bird that people would want to travel the world to go find and see, right? And this bird lives in this ecosystem with the only type of rodent that carries this particular strain of hantavirus that can be transmissible between people. So that's the working theory. I don't know if the science is correct on that, but it sort of added up in my head that, okay, that sounds plausible on its face. Myself not knowing a whole lot about birds or rodents or this particular strain of hantavirus and how it's biologically, um, transmitted between the ecosystem.
Wow. Uh, as soon as we get off, I'm going to message a friend of mine. Well, not a friend, he's been a guest on this podcast. He travels the world to birdwatch. And I mean, he's been to remote places and he cruises to birdwatch. So I'm going to email him and just check in, say everything okay, solely because of what you just told me. No matter if it's credible from Instagram or not, that's very, just hearing that, I immediately thought about him as you were talking.
Well, and if I heard about this, maybe he's heard about this as well through the cruising bird watching community. I'm sure there are a lot of cruisers who do that because it's such a great way to go to a lot of places and see these rare birds.
Yeah, I didn't know until I interviewed him how major world globally bird watching was.
Yes, we have a whole lot of bird watching here in South Texas. We have a lot of rare birds that come here in the wintertime. So a lot of people who come to see them, but luckily no hantavirus in South Texas so far.
So, what duty does the cruise ship operator owe these passengers?
So cruise lines always owe the passengers a duty of reasonable care under the circumstances. So that can mean essentially, what does that mean outside of legalese? That means they have to be careful. If they know that there's a risk that somebody could get sick or somebody could become injured or something bad could happen, and they know that that's a possibility, they have to take reasonable care and do what they can do to protect the passengers and make sure that they don't get sick, make sure that they don't become injured or that something bad doesn't happen to them when they're out bird watching.
So, in this particular case, do you have any examples of what the cruise line has done to given their duty that the duties that you just kind of laid out?
So in this exact case of this one cruise ship, I don't know in particular what they were able to do to kind of prevent the spread of the virus. I don't know specifically what they have done. There hasn't been a whole lot of clear reporting on that yet. I'm sure they were kind of figuring it out as they went along. Like I said, this is a very rare virus. I don't think it's something that they could have really foreseen before this gentleman became sick and passed away, and they discovered that it was this virus, because it is just so rare. But
Mm-hmm.
in that circumstance, once they know that somebody on board has gotten very ill with a virus that may be transmissible between people, reasonable care under those circumstances would be cleaning the surfaces, making super sure that all dishes and cutlery are sanitized through the appropriate heat level in the dishwasher
Mm-hmm.
before being reused, wiping down the elevator buttons, making sure that anyone who has a fever or has any type of symptoms are quarantining in their cabins and staying away from other passengers. So things like that. And those types of measures we've seen before in, you mentioned the COVID crisis a little bit ago. These are the types of measures that cruise ships take for other types of viruses as well, when they suspect that there may be people on board who have gotten sick. So it applies to COVID, it applies to the norovirus and anything else that they can kind of reasonably foresee and be able to prevent through the knowledge of how it spreads.
You just mentioned COVID. I know it's early, but from your perspective, do you see parallels to the COVID situation?
Well, yes, there certainly are some parallels in that I think that, like you mentioned earlier, that before COVID happened, none of us had ever heard of COVID. I mean, maybe there's some type of COVID scientist out there who's been studying some type of strains of COVID something for years, but not COVID the way that we think of it because it was brand new. Um, the hantavirus has existed for a long time. People have known about it for a long time. But I think that right now people are kind of hearing about it for the first time. Many people are. So, and there is that sort of apprehension that we have when we hear, oh, there's this new virus and somebody passed away and now other people are getting sick, and it sounds like, that is kind of echoes of COVID, where it is immediately, of course, a reminder of that time when the world all of a sudden just became very different overnight, and these cruises shut down and they had to figure out, well, how do we get back and running? How do we protect our passengers? And that sort of thing. So in that way, it does remind me of COVID. I think it's the same kind of emotional response that people have, that kind of concern and that kind of worry about, well, maybe I booked a cruise for the summer, the summertime's coming up, and am I going to be all right on this cruise, or is this going to be like COVID where I'm going to have to be worried about the hantavirus? But I think it's also different because COVID's much, much more contagious. My understanding is that it's much, much more contagious than the hantavirus. I've read that the hantavirus, you really have to be in close contact with somebody to be able to contract it. Whereas with COVID, we all remember that 6 foot distance rule and the masks and the everything and all of this. Apparently, the scientists are not concerned with this virus being that contagious. Um, Also, I think it's just a different kind of situation because this is really sort of an isolated incident of it. The people who have come back and repatriated to the United States, I think there have been reports of some people who have left the ship becoming ill, but not reports of this virus being transmitted outside of that small group of people. So I think that probably as we speak right now, the cruise line that owns the Hondius they probably have everybody they could find out there cleaning that entire ship and getting it ready for the next set of passengers. And I think that this is probably something that we're not going to hear about on cruises as just being a big contagion like COVID was.
You said something interesting. You talked about the duties the cruise ship operator owes the passengers, and I understood that pretty clearly. But then later on, you talked about a passenger who became ill after leaving the ship. So, does the cruise ship operator's duties end when the passenger leaves the ship, or or does the cruise ship operator have any, for lack of a better word, any interest in the fact that one of those passengers subsequently became ill? Did that make sense?
Yes, yes. So in this particular circumstance where this man passed away, we have this law here called the Death on the High Seas Act. And this law applies to people who pass away on cruise ships who are American citizens and in other certain limited circumstances. Um, the Death on the High Seas Act is a way for the family of someone who passes away as a result of an event that occurred on the high seas. It's a way for the family to be able to maintain a lawsuit and assert their rights as a result of any negligence that occurred that caused that death. So this gentleman, I believe, I believe he left the ship and passed away in the hospital, or I can't remember if it was him or his wife who passed away off the ship. But if their family members were able to show some type of negligence on behalf of the cruise line, that they did not fulfill that duty of reasonable care under the circumstances, then they would be able to assert their rights and recover damages under the Death on the High Seas Act.
So what about, so I was thinking of the person who, or maybe it's the person who developed it after they left who died, but I thought you mentioned a person who left the ship and then got sick but didn't die.
Yes, I believe there have been some reports of that. So that person also would be able to maintain a cause of action if they suffered serious damages as a result of being sick. So that could be healthcare costs. It could be transportation costs of having to leave the vessel early, the cost of losing the rest of their vacation. I'm sure a cruise like that, sailing all around the world with a big itinerary, is probably a pretty expensive ticket. So somebody like that, they could maintain a cause of action against the cruise line as well under that same duty, the duty of reasonable care under the circumstances. In this particular case, it may be difficult to establish foreseeability for the cruise line to say, well, you should have known that this could happen and you should have prevented it. But it's sort of tenuous, right? Because by the time this person who you and I are talking about, who came home and became symptomatic after they got home, by the time they got sick, the cruise line did know about it. So a lot of times these cases are very fact intensive. It's about, well, what was the timeline and what did the cruise line know, or what should they have known, given the information that was available, and what actions did they take to try to protect their passengers from getting sick or from some other bad thing happening.
Let's shift away from hantavirus and coronavirus, because just thinking about those days during the shutdown gives me a headache. gives me PTSD.
I agree.
And I'm sure that's true with a lot of the other listeners. But sticking with law, though, many of us, well, let me speak for myself. I always kind of thought, because of the way the laws are, and you'll clear that up for us, I kind of thought it was virtually impossible to sue the operators, the cruise line. And then you didn't have to be a cruiser last week or a couple of weeks ago to hear about this woman who I think, I might have the number wrong, but I'm thinking the number is she got served 14 shots of alcohol, and then subsequently, I guess she fell and broke something or fell and hurt herself. And then she sued the cruise line and won. And I was thinking to myself, it's almost impossible to win against the cruise line. Talk about maritime law in general. Forget a pandemic or the past pandemic or the current hantavirus. Just in general, give us a brief overview of maritime law as it relates to my listeners, as it relates to cruise passengers.
Okay, so you're gonna have to stop me if I talk too much about this. I'm such a nerd about maritime law. I love just talking about it and telling people about it. So to start off with, I think that a lot of people, especially people who are not experienced cruisers, they hear about maritime law and they think, oh, it's maritime. Nah, there's no law on the high seas.
Maritime law.
It's the it's the territory of pirates and privateers and the swashbucklers and people who do all of that. And it is confusing because you're like, well, wait a minute, I'm not close to any country. The ship that I'm on is not an American flag ship. It's not regulated by American authorities in terms of its day-to-day operations and its systems and its registrations and all of those things. So what law does apply? Well, there is law that applies. There is actually law on the high seas. And it is very fun and interesting. It's very nuanced. It's really every case is different, and so that's an aspect of the practice that I really enjoy.
You said it's really fun and interesting. Now I'm going to hold you to that. Give me an example of law and fun and interesting doesn't seem to go in the same sentence. And I have a lot of friends who are attorneys, so I'm not that's not a knock on attorneys. I can imagine maritime law being particularly interesting because I've heard of some pretty peculiar stuff. But later on, I'm going to hold you to the fun part.
Well, sure. Well, let me talk about some of these things that are fun and interesting and different about maritime law. So, anything that can go wrong on land can also go wrong on the ocean, but it's this completely different set of law that applies on the ocean. And the reason for that is that the history of the United States, the history of every seafaring nation, every country that has a coastline with a port in it, has been very dependent on international commerce. And so they've created this special body of law to sort of address those very big commercial interests, those very big international issues. Sometimes they can cause issues between countries. And they have this, they being, the doctrine, the people, the judges, everyone who's formed the law over the last 1,000 years have come up with these unique tools that are only available in maritime law. So I remember one time I was living in Galveston and I was having a happy hour cocktail, on a restaurant by the pier
Okay.
with my husband. And it was a day when one of those big carnival ships was just about to leave, and the harbor pilot had gotten there to take the ship out to sea, and everyone was on board and ready to sail away. And then all of a sudden, the United States Marshal comes up, and he comes all the way up in his car. He jumps out. He jumps up on all the way up through the terminal, up the gangway, onto the ship. And then people kind of start trickling off the ship, and I knew what had happened. I knew exactly what had happened, but everyone around me was like, what is this U.S. Marshal got on? Is there some kind of crime happening on this ship? What's going on? But I knew what had happened because under the maritime law, there's this fun and interesting provision where you can arrest a vessel if it owes you money, or if it owes you something, or if its sister ship in the same fleet owned by the same company owes you money. So, or you claim that it owes you money. There's some kind of litigation going on. But that is one of the most fun things that I have done as a maritime lawyer, is on behalf of a client who, for example, has a big repair bill that hasn't been paid, or someone who's gotten hurt on a ship, and they want to have security for that lawsuit before this vessel sails away to the other side of the planet. As a maritime lawyer, I'm able to go to the judge, go to the U.S. Marshals, go to the federal court and say, here's my problem. This is what happened. My client is owed money. We have a maritime lien on this vessel. And under Rule C of the Special Admiralty Rules of Federal Civil Procedure, we are allowed to arrest the vessel without letting them know ahead of time. So it's very dramatic. It's very dramatic.
Wow.
And the U.S. Marshal actually goes on board with a warrant, like an arrest warrant, like you would think about on a show like Law and Order, or, one of those crime movies. where the police come up and they show the person the arrest warrant and they take them in handcuffs and take them away, right? Well, how do you handcuff the Carnival Triumph? How do you handcuff one of these big cruise vessels? You don't. But the marshal comes on with the arrest warrant, shows it to the captain, and says, "You're not allowed to leave this port until the judge tells me that I can tell you you can go." And so that's one of the things that's really fun. So as my husband and I are sitting there with our
Well, it's fun. It's fun unless you're a passenger on that arrested ship.
Well, but that's the other thing. I think that in this particular circumstance, it was actually fun for these passengers because they were really only delayed for about 30 minutes because that caught Carnival's attention really, really, really fast. And they sent somebody down to the
Wow.
courthouse and they said, "Hey, we'll put up a letter of undertaking. We will, we have our insurer right here on the line. They're from London and they're about to say, hey, we are good. We are good. Let the ship go." And as soon as those representations are made and they're made adequately, the judge will say, "Okay, your vessel is now free to go because we have this monetary interest. We have this promise from you that in exchange of letting the cruise ship sail, that you have promised to pay any judgment that's rendered in this lawsuit." So the cruise lines react very, very quickly because they want everybody to have a good time. They want everybody to have fun. But I think in this particular circumstance, when that happens and when I saw it happen, when it caused about a 30-minute delay, it caused a 30-minute delay, but you know what? Everybody got a great story out of it. Everyone said, "I didn't even know you could arrest a vessel." And I got to explain to people, well, you can.
I know that my listeners are all saying, I didn't even know a vessel could get arrested. Now, how frequent does something like that happen?
For cruise vessels, it is rare. It's
Okay.
very rare for cruise vessels for exactly that reason. The cruise lines don't want to cause any delays. They don't want people to, kind of think about, well, why was it arrested in the first place? Did something bad happen? And they want to keep everything as smooth as possible. So in terms of that happening, it is very rare. But not unheard of. It does happen.
You have any thoughts about that case that I mentioned with the woman, or are you familiar with that, with the woman drinking all those shots?
I'm not familiar with that particular case. I have represented plaintiffs in similar circumstances. One of the common things, unfortunately, that we do see on these cruise lines is overservice, and then people get hurt because they've been overserved. And when I'm talking about these issues, I'm not trying to say that cruise lines are bad or that people should be very wary of this or anything like that. Under the law, the standard is negligence. It's negligence. And what does negligence mean in real English? It means somebody made a mistake. And unfortunately, people make mistakes. Nobody's perfect. But when somebody makes a mistake and somebody gets hurt as a result of that, I think you mentioned this lady broke her leg.
I know she got hurt. I don't want to misstate the facts, so I don't know if she
Sure.
what she broke, but she fell. I think she fell down some steps subsequent to drinking all those shots.
Yes. So this is something that I do see in my practice a lot, representing passengers on cruise ships, is a lot of times a bartender makes a mistake, somebody gets overserved, and they get hurt as a result. Many times when there's something else involved like that, maybe it's steps, like in this case, maybe it's a door jam, maybe it's the edge of a rug or a hot deck on the top of the vessel. Um, a lot of times, when it makes the news is when someone else has been hurt in that same way before. So, maybe they had another incident where they got sued because somebody else got hurt going down those same steps and they didn't do anything to fix them. And the over service is not in and of itself a reason to go after the cruise line, but when the crew of the ship has overserved somebody and then they encounter a dangerous condition, like maybe some steps they didn't see or steps that were slippery or something like that, that is when you have all the ingredients to get a recovery like this woman did in this case.
So maybe I'm wrong in this perception that I have that it is virtually impossible, that the law is really stacked against the cruising passenger. Maybe cruise lines do get found culpable. Well, obviously, we just talked about a situation. Even though you aren't familiar with that particular situation, sounds like there are a lot of cases involving so-called overservice.
There, yes, over service or, even without the alcohol element, if this lady had not been overserved, but she just simply tripped down these stairs and maybe someone else had done the same thing the day before or a month before, the year before, and got hurt, and the ship knew about it, then that would also be a circumstance where recovery would be available. These kind of things, there are so many cruise ships, and these cruise ships carry so many people. Things are just bound to happen at some point or another, unfortunately. But this type of circumstance is very common. I do see it a lot, and there is absolutely ways that people who get hurt on these ships can recover for their damages, their injuries.
I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it because I'm mostly focused on cruise passengers, but I know sometimes crew workers pursue action against the cruise line. Obviously without you're not going to betray any confidentiality. Any cases, interesting cases you remember where a cruise employee was successful against a cruise line?
Yes, that happens quite a bit. It is really for the cruise employees, it is often highly dependent on their nationality, their country of origin, because the country where they come from dictates what types of terms the cruise lines put in their employment contracts. And often in these contracts, it will say they're not allowed to say, well, you don't get anything from us, period. They can't do that. Um, but they can say, well, we think that the United States is a little more generous with damages than maybe somewhere like the Philippines. So because you are from Asia, because you're not American, we are going to put in your contract that if you do get hurt, you have to file a claim in the Philippines or somewhere else. I don't mean the Philippines specifically, but another country outside of the United States. And because most of these crew members are not American, they can do that. In regard to American crew members, that's really not an available thing that they can do under the Jones Act and under American maritime law. Um, under maritime law, there are protections that, let me go back. Under American maritime law, there are protections that apply to everybody, regardless of nationality, but there are stronger protections for people who are American.
So those American law stipulations, they don't they don't just apply to things that happen in American waters. They apply no matter where they happen.
Right. In regard to American passengers or American crew members, that's absolutely correct.
No, no, I was thinking of in regard to. I thought I heard you say that some American laws apply to non-American crew members.
Yes. So but you picked up on exactly what the distinction is. If it happens in American waters and it's someone who's not American, then that's likely that American law can apply. Um,
Okay.
yeah, but if it's so the Hondius is a good example. There were a lot of Americans on that ship. Those American citizens will likely be able to pursue if they pursue claims, they will likely be able to pursue under the American law. But there were also a lot of people on that ship who were not American. And that ship my understanding is, I could be wrong on this, but my understanding is there was no American port in that particular itinerary for that cruise where the hantavirus broke out. So because there was no American port, there has to be some kind of jurisdictional link. Uh, Most of these, none of the cruise companies are formulated under the laws of the United States. Most of them have their primary place of business, their headquarters in Florida. There's one that has its headquarters in California. Almost all of them are in kind of Fort Lauderdale, Miami, that area, the kind of the cruise capital. But because the fact is that they're not an American company because they weren't formed under American law. Most of them were formed under the laws of Bermuda or places like that that are outside of American jurisdiction.
Well, I don't want my listeners' eyes to glaze over talking about these very, particular legal matters. So, in general, is there anything else that we should be particularly aware of as passengers from a legal standpoint? Leave us with that legal thought. Well, not leave us because you're not leaving yet, but let's close the legal discussion with any general tips for passengers.
Absolutely. So I think that your listeners are, many of your listeners are seasoned passengers on cruises. But a lot of people, most of my clients who come in because they've gotten injured on a cruise or on an excursion from a cruise, they don't realize that the cruise ticket in itself is actually a contract. And there's a lot of fine print that goes in there. And so that's something to be mindful of, is to just take a look at it and see, what are the terms in here? Can I sue in the United States? Is it trying to tell me to go somewhere else? Sometimes those provisions are not enforceable, but sometimes they are. It's always an interesting thing to read and see, and just see kind of what is in that contract, just to kind of know. But I think the other thing, which is really the biggest thing for your listeners to hear about today, is that it's not maritime on the high seas. There is maritime law that applies, that's enforceable, that protects people's rights when something goes wrong. And it's always good to talk with a lawyer if you have a question, if something has happened, you've become injured. Always a good idea to call a lawyer and see what kind of rights are available to you. The vast majority of the time, there is a way to pursue your rights under the terms of the law.
Well, Carra, I imagine you are very busy. But before we let you go, we usually ask our guests some light or fun cruise questions. And attorneys like fun too.
We do. Especially maritime attorneys.
So our first question is, how do you spend your me time?
Well, my favorite way to spend my me time is just sitting on a beach somewhere. I just love sitting on a beach. I live here in beautiful Corpus Christi, Texas. There's lots of beautiful beaches to just hang out at and just watch the waves come in. That's the most relaxing thing to me.
Sounds like A great me time activity. Do you have time to do any traveling for leisure?
I do, yes. My husband and I travel fairly often, not a whole lot, but fairly often.
Hmm. Where uh, where are you most gratified for having visited?
My favorite place I've ever visited was New Zealand. I just absolutely loved it. We had an opportunity to spend, a little more than half a week there, a couple of years ago, and it was just the most beautiful place. You know, you see for example, Lord of the Rings. A lot of people are familiar with those movies that were filmed in New Zealand and all those beautiful panoramic shots of the hillside and just the beautiful landscape, the mountains. And it is beautiful in the movie, but oh my goodness, in person, it is even more beautiful. It is unbelievable how gorgeous it is out there.
Certainly on my bucket list. What's on your travel bucket list?
Oh goodness. Well, I would really love to I'd love to spend some more time in Asia. When I was in college, I lived in South Korea for a summer in Busan, which is another coastal town, and I just loved it. But I didn't get to spend a whole lot of time, well, any time really outside of South Korea within Asia while I was there. So I would really love to explore Japan, maybe see just we almost always travel to beaches. So I'd be very interested to see some of those beautiful beaches that you see in the Instagram pictures of all those countries in Asia, where you just see the difference in the landscape and how beautiful it is over there.
Okay. What's your favorite cruise or travel drink and cruise or travel food?
It is without a doubt the molten lava cake on the dessert menu on the cruise ships. I Every night when I'm on the cruise, I have to get one, and sometimes I'll try and sneak back and get another one. They are just so good, and I think about it when I'm off the cruise. I've seen I've seen some restaurants might have something similar, and
Something
I
similar,
ordered.
yeah.
Oh, it's just not the same. It's
Hmm.
just better on the cruise.
With ice cream, right? Don't you get ice cream with yours?
Oh, yes, that vanilla ice
Yep,
cream with
yep,
that molten chocolate, so
yep,
good.
yep. Okay, that's your dessert. What about any? Are you do you have a special cruise drink?
Well, I wouldn't say I have a special cruise drink. I think, um, a lot of the bartenders on the ships are just very talented at what they do. And I kind of like to ask them, well, what do you like to make? What are you working on right now? What's
Okay,
something new? Can I try something out that you're working on?
good move, good
And
move.
that's always, I've never been disappointed. It's always good.
Okay, finally, what's your most wonderful or memorable or funniest or even most embarrassing cruise or travel experience?
So I have,
It could be at a port or on a vessel or in the air.
well, I have one story that is all of those things wrapped in together.
Oh, okay,
I was on,
we like
oh
those.
yeah, I was on my second cruise with my mom again. It's always my mom and me on these cruises. And we booked an excursion in Cozumel to go to an island. And I can't remember what the name of the island was, but I remember it was the one where they filmed the Corona beer commercials.
Okay.
And so just beautiful, and it's Mexico. They've got fresh guacamole that just tastes 1,000 times better there than it does here in the US. And we're sitting on the beach, we're talking, we're having fun with everybody. And we saw our tour guide, but we we weren't planning on going out into the city. You know, we took a little shuttle vessel over to this island, like straight from the cruise dock. And so we didn't bring our phones, because your phones don't work out there. At least, mine didn't at the time. And we just didn't bring anything with us. We brought our flip-flops and, some cash, and that was kind of it. And so neither one of us had a phone and neither one of us had a watch. And so
Uh-oh.
you can see where this is going, right? And so we asked our guide who was there on the little shuttle vessel. We said, "Hey, can you let us know when it's kind of time to go, because there's not a clock out here, and we didn't bring a watch, so can you just kind of wave us down?" He's like, "Oh, sure, yeah, I got you." Well, I don't know if he did or didn't, but if he did, we didn't notice it. And it turns out that there were multiple groups of people from various ships all there together. And it also turns out that when you book a cruise that's going to Cozumel and you're all going at the same time, everybody's kind of wearing the same thing. Everyone's kind of doing the same thing. So we couldn't really differentiate between, wait, are these people from our ship, or did everyone from our ship leave? Well, everyone from our ship left.
Oh,
And my mom
wow.
was there. And so we this man who worked for the excursion company had, I think it was his personal boat, and oh my goodness, he rushed us back at like 50 knots across all the way back to the cruise dock, and he had a guy waiting there with a golf cart. And so my mom and I jump, we run up to the golf cart, we jump in, because the ship looks like it's about to pull away. Nobody's waiting up on
Wow.
the on the pier. I mean, we were late. We were super late. And so we run up to the golf cart, we jump in the golf cart, and we hold on so we can go. And after going 50 knots on the vessel back to the pier, this golf cart could only go about 3 miles an hour. And so we just kind of hurry up and wait. And kind of at the end, we just got off and just ran the rest of the way up the dock. And when we got on the ship, they didn't have us come up the regular gangway that everybody comes up. They had us come in the crew entrance.
Wow.
Like, we were that late. They'd already pulled everything up. Like, it was done. And
So you are a rare combination. An attorney who's a pier runner.
oh yeah. But it was fun.
Wow.
We still laugh about that all the time.
But you made it. You made it.
We made it. We made it.
Wow. Carra, it has been great talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on the Joy of Cruising podcast and providing listeners with a perspective that few of us are aware of. Or like me, many of us have misconceptions about. So thank you so much. All the best to you in your future endeavors. And as I like to say, we'll see you on the ocean.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Paul. Happy cruising.
The Joy of Cruising and Cruising Interrupted, each $16.99 plus shipping, and new release, The Joy of Cruising Again for $18.99, can be ordered at the link on thejoyofcruisingpodcast.com. For each of the 3 books, use the discount code Joy of Cruising Podcast and get $4 off. The Joy of Cruising books are also available at Amazon. Order the ebook at Amazon or your favorite online retailer. Stay in touch by joining the Joy of Cruising Podcast Facebook group or following the Joy of Cruising Podcast on Instagram. We're constantly adding new shows. Please leave a review and tell a friend about us. We hope you enjoyed this brief escape to the ocean. See you next week.